Middle East was on fire. Oil prices jumped, stock markets crashed, airports closed, shipping routes shut down, 12 countries got hit, 330,000 people fled their houses. The war that the world feared for decades had finally begun. This is the story of Operation Epic Fury, Operation Roaring Lion, and Operation True Promise 4, the biggest war in the Middle East has ever seen, and it has affected every single country on earth mostly. Hello everyone. In today's video, we are going to talk about the US-Israel vs Iran war and what happened during the conflict. But before, let's first understand the story behind how this war actually began. Iran was secretly building nuclear weapons, funding terrorist groups across the Middle East, killing its own people in the streets, threatening to wipe Israel off the map every single year. Then in February 2026, nuclear talks between America and Iran completely collapsed. Iran was sitting on 460 kilograms of uranium, just weeks away from building a nuclear bomb. Trump gave Iran a final 10-day deadline to make a deal. Iran said no. Then the conflict escalated on 28 February 2026 when the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iranian military and nuclear targets, which then triggered missile retaliation from Iran across the region. To understand why so many countries are affected by the US-Israel war, with Iran, we need to look at some maps. Iran has always been seen as a kind of gateway to the east, and from the east as a gateway to the west. In the south is the Persian Gulf, one of the most important waterways for oil supplies as well as agriculture, trade and general supplies. Iran and 7 other countries border the Gulf, and the relationship have often been strained. Iran doesn't really have many friends in the neighborhood. The relationship between Iran and the rest of the Gulf states has been very tense ever. Israel and the US oppose Iran's nuclear program because they say Iran has been trying to make a nuclear bomb. The Iranian government has repeatedly said its nuclear program is entirely peaceful and denies that it is seeking to develop nuclear weapons. So the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. So in this war, Israel launched a powerful military strike known as Operation Lion's Roar, targeting Iranian military infrastructure. Soon after, the United States joined the campaign with Operation Epic Fury, expanding the scale of the conflict. Iran responded with its own retaliation campaign called Operation True Promise 4, launching missiles and drones towards Israel territory and US bases in the region. Within just a few days, the situation escalated into one of the most dangerous geopolitical crises in the Middle East. In this video, we'll break down what really happened during the war. The US and Israel hit sites across Iran and killed the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Iranian officials said a US strike also hit a school, killing more than 153 people, including many children. The US military said it was looking into reports of the incident. Iran called the US-Israel attacks unprovoked, illegal and illegitimate. The opening strikes did more than remove Ali Khamenei, the Iran's supreme leader. They broke the backbone of Iran's command structure. Iran's assembly of experts moved to appoint his son Mojtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader. He rushed transition under fire, but the losses continue. The Secretary General of the UN condemned the military escalation. We are witnessing a grave threat to international peace and security. Iran has retaliated by striking Israel and also other countries in the Middle East, where the US has a presence. And it's not just hitting military targets, it also hitting luxury hotels, shopping malls, airports, oil installations and apartment buildings have also been damaged. They want to hit the key infrastructure in the Gulf of states. They want to hurt the potential tourist industry that those states are developing and hurt confidence of investors that are being attracted into the region. From a strategic point of view, Iran was probably trying to use this as a way to pressure the Gulf countries to then pressure the US to stop bombing Iran. Iran has carried out limited retaliatory strikes on US bases in Gulf countries. The past, but nothing on this scale has been seen before, and fighting has spread beyond the Gulf countries. And now let's look at the impacts on war. And there's another way Iran has responded to the Straits in this bit of water. This is the Strait of Hormuz. It's what is called a choke point. It's a narrow strategic route for global trade that is used 24/7. This bit here is just 39 kilometers wide. This shipping route is how we get 20% of the world's oil and gas as well as 30% of urea. That helps us make fertilizers to grow food. Iran is using its military to disrupt traffic through the strait, which is something they've done before. It is a very important trump card. Shipping companies are no longer going to the Strait of Hormuz because they are worried the tankers on the ships might get stuck. Gulf countries use this strait to import some food and products from other parts of Asia. So closing it comes at a price for Iran too. And we can see the impact of that already. Let's turn to the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz, the world's most important choke point. Every day, thousands of massive oil tankers pass through a narrow strip of water between two coastlines. At its narrowest point, this passage is only a few kilometers wide. At nearly a fifth of the world's oil moves through it. If this route were ever blocked, global energy markets would react within hours. Fuel prices would rise, supply chains would slow, entire economics would feel the shock. This is not a canal, not a city, not a pipeline. It is a natural gateway, one that quietly controls the flow of global trade. This is the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz lies between Iran to the north and Oman and the United Arab Emirates to the south. It connects the Persian Gulf to the open water of the Indian Ocean. Every ship leaving the Gulf must pass through this narrow corridor before reaching global markets. Tankers moving in opposite direction pass each other with little room for error. To west lies the Persian Gulf, home to some of the largest oil reserves on earth. To the east lies the open ocean, connecting energy supplies to Asia, Europe and beyond. There is no easy alternative route, no canal, no shortcut. For global energy trade, this narrow passage is unavoidable. Oil-rich countries around the Persian Gulf share one graphical reality. Most of their energy exports are surrendered by land. Pipelines can carry only limited volumes, and building new routes across deserts and mountains is slow and expensive. For massive oil tankers, the sea remains the most efficient path. The Strait of Hormuz is a single maritime gateway connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. Every tanker leaving ports in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates must pass through this narrow corridor. There is no second passage, no hidden route around it. Even the world's largest energy producers depend on this single point on the map. In global trade, few places concentrate so much importance into such a small space. Every day, millions of barrels of oil pass through the Strait of Hormuz. This energy does not stay in the Middle East. In travel across oceans to power factories, transport goods and fuel entire economics. Countries in Asia depend heavily on these shipments. Europe relies on them to stabilize energy markets. Even nations far from the region feel the effects of disruptions. The efforts would be felt almost immediately. The Strait of Hormuz is a natural gateway that quietly influences economics, politics, and daily life across the planet. It carries nearly 20% of global energy supplies, and right now Iran has blockaded it. Traffic through this waterway has dropped by 95% since the war started. It has rocketed oil prices to over $100 per barrel, but is there a this escalated on the courts. Is Iran relaxing the hormuz choke? Look at the recent data. Around 8 ships were crossing the Strait. That's 8 non-Iranian ships. It's nearly double from the week before. So Iran does seem to relaxing the hormuz choke, but it's not a blanket move. It's more of a checkpoint system. Ships from friendly nations are being flagged through, like India, China, Pakistan, and Turkey. Ships linked to the West and Israel are staying away because they will be targeted. And the thinking is clear: Iran does not want to antagonize its partners. It needs all the support it can get from them. At the same time, even a partial blockade gives Iran leverage. Just look at the oil prices. Before the war, one barrel cost $72. Today it costs $107. That's nearly 45% up. It's the highest level since July 2022. And remember, this is a partial shutdown. It's an equation that benefits the Iranian regime right now. Their own oil exports are going strong. Despite the war, Iran is shipping nearly 1 million barrels per day. If you add the elevated prices, Iran is making good money. But what if the war escalates further? What if the US and Israel destroy Iran's energy sites? What if Iran hits back at Gulf oil refineries? Well, then all bets are off. A worst case scenario could be a spike in oil prices above $200. The US is hoping to avoid that. Donald Trump tried to create a naval coalition. He asked other countries to escort ships through the Hormuz Strait. All he got was rejected. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. For starters, Trump has spelled Strait wrong. For some reason, he has all put the word in quotes. But here's a bigger question. Why is anyone having to secure the Strait of Hormuz? Until the 28th of February, the Strait was open. More than 100 ships were transiting every day. No attacks, no disruptions. But the whole problem was created by Trump's war on Iran. Everyone knew that the regime would shut the Strait, but apparently Donald Trump downplayed it. Look at these reports in American media. Trump thought that Iran would surrender before they could even close the Strait. He also said the US military could prevent it from happening. Those assumptions, of course, fell apart. The regime shut off the Strait when the fighting started, and the US Navy could only stand by and watch. Even now, American warships are not approaching the Strait of Hormuz. They are staying away near the Gulf of Oman. So to recap, first Trump thought the Strait would not be closed. He was wrong. Then he asked others to escort tankers. They refused. And now he's hoping to destroy Iran's capability to block the Strait. Again, that's easier said than done. Iran has hundreds of high-speed boats packed with explosives. They have thousands of shared drones left, not to mention the sea mines. If Iran mines the Strait, nothing can sail through. So when it comes to the Hormuz, Iran holds all the cards because these cards were dealt by geography. Iran holds the entire northern coast of the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest, the Strait is just 33 kilometers wide. You don't need an armada to block it. You just need some crude boats and a few drones. What does this mean for India? Well, supplies will be extremely important. Nobody knows how long the Strait of Hormuz will remain shut. So India had to look at more Russian supplies. Just to give you some context, the Persian Gulf supplies sail through the Strait of Hormuz. The Russian supplies sail through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. As of now, that second route, the Suez Canal in the Red Sea, has not been impacted. But as for prices, don't expect relief. So the Russian are selling at a premium. Reports say around $4 to $5 above the usual price. That's what Russia is selling for. Compare that to February. The February Russia was selling at a discount of $13 per barrel. So far, India refineries have bought around 20 million barrels of oil. The India is facing the shortage of gas supplies. This war is happening 3000 kilometers from Indian border, but this week it has entered Indian kitchens. There is a shortage of cooking gas. In India, most households rely on gas for cooking. They use it in two forms, LPG and PNG. LPG is liquefied petroleum gas. It arrives in a cylinder. The standard size is 14.2 kg. It sits in a corner of your kitchen connected to the stove. When it runs out, you replace the cylinder. The second option is PNG, piped natural gas. As the name suggests, it comes through a pipeline. No cylinder required. It connects a pipe directly to your kitchen. Now, this network, the PNG network, is expanding, but largely in Indian cities, PNG remains limited to urban India, and its supply is more or less interrupted. So if you have piped gas in your kitchen, you have little to worry about. The problem is most households don't have piped gas. They rely on LPG cylinders, and those cylinders are hard to come by. More than 300 million households in India depend on LPG. More than 90% of the restaurants in India also depend on LPG, and they are reporting a supply switch. Especially restaurants, canteens and hotels, their menus are getting shorter. Hot meals are being replaced with snacks and fast food. In some cases, even a cup of tea has become harder to serve. Some restaurants are offering lemon water instead because they are going for options that use less fuel. Cooks or rationing their cooking gas. Some establishments have temporarily shut their kitchens, and that creates a series of challenges. Millions of jobs could be at risk. India's restaurant industry is worth 6.6 lakh crore rupee, that more than $70 billion. This industry employs more than 8 million people. Even a single day of disruption can prove costly for this industry. Going by one estimate, restaurants could offer losses of 1200 to 1300 crore rupees per day. That's more than $100 million. If restaurants and hotels take a hit, the impact will travel across the entire ecosystem. From chefs and waiters to delivery partners working with food apps, they'll all be hit. Plus, there's another side to the story. Restaurants are not just places of recreation. For many people, they are a daily source of food, especially in urban India. But ordering is no longer a luxury. It is a part of everyday life. So this disruption is more wide-ranging than it appears. The question is, what caused it? Gas supplies are not reaching Indian shores. This is the problem. That's because of the Strait of Hormuz. It's shut. Hundreds of ships are stranded in this water. Iran has imposed a blockade. This is blowing up ships that try to pass the strait. This has hit oil supplies all over the world. But for India, cooking gas is the bigger vulnerability. You see, roughly 60% of the LPG used by India is imported, and about 90% of these supplies come from this trade, the Strait of Hormuz. 90% of India's supply come through the Strait of Hormuz. If there is a shortage of crude, India can still manage it. It can top alternative sources like Russia. But when it comes to cooking gas, there are fewer choices. India completely depends on the West Asian supply. So the government is rushing to plug the gaps. Earlier this week, instructions were issued. Refineries were asked to maximize output of cooking gas for households. That order lifted domestic production by 25%. It increased domestic production by 25%. Supplies to homes, hospitals, and educational institutions are being prioritized. In globe, there are 7 choke points that control global trade. Your phone, your fuel, even everyday essentials, almost everything you use has traveled through narrow ocean pathways, not highways, not railways, but critical maritime shortcuts. These are the world's choke points, and when they fail, the global economy falters. And now we break down 7 choke points that control global trade and why disruption in even one can send shock waves around the globe. Firstly, let's understand what are the choke points. Choke points are narrow maritime shortcuts carrying a large share of global trade. A single blockage can delay shipments, rise costs, and push inflation higher. The first choke point is Bab el Mandeb, also known as the Gate of Tears, sites at the entrance to the Red Sea. Houthi drone and missile attacks have made it dangerous. Many ships now avoided it. Kirkland navigate Africa, adding 6,000 miles and nearly 2 weeks to the journey. This results in raise in fuel cost, surge in shipping rates, impacting global trade. Choke point is Suez Canal. Right after Bab el Mandeb is the Suez Canal, linking Europe and Asia. In 2021, the Ever Given, a massive container ship, got stuck, halting $10 billion in trade daily. Narrow and conjugated, it takes one accident to the paralyze global shipping. Together, Bab el Mandeb and Suez form the critical Europe-Asia corridor. The third choke point is Strait of Hormuz. It carries roughly 20% of the world's oil and gas. In 2026, conflict around Iran has sharply reduced ship traffic, with many commercial vessels delays or avoiding the route. A few ships continue to pass under special arrangements, but even limited disruptions drives up fuel prices and squeezes global supplies. The fourth choke point is Strait of Malacca. Asia's busiest choke point, Strait of Malacca, links the Indian Ocean to the Pacific. Every year, around 94,000 ships pass through this route. Heavy traffic, narrow lands, and piracy risk make it fragile. Further, Arctic routes may ease pressure, but Malacca remains vital for India, China, and Southeast Asia. The fifth choke point is Danish Straits, a key route for Russian oil exports. The Danish Straits are shallow and heavily used, increasingly the risk of accidents and disruptions. The sixth choke point is Turkish Straits. The Turkish Straits serve as the only gateway for Black Sea exports to global markets. Narrow lanes, fog, and strong currents make them hazardous. A blockade here could hit oil, grain, and global commodity trade. The seventh choke point is the Panama Canal. It links the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. Drought conditions in recent years have impacted daily crossings, causing delays and higher shipping costs. Other waterways, like 7 choke points, show how fragile global trade really is. Ongoing disruption, like those at the Strait of Hormuz, are just a reminder that a single blockage anywhere could send shock waves across the globe. As conflict escalates in West Asia, a hidden risk is emerging beneath the sea. The world's internet cables carrying over 95% of global data are under threat. What does this mean for India's connectivity, businesses, and daily internet use? The internet does not live in the cloud. It runs through a web of cables lying slightly on the ocean floor, thousands of meters below the surface. Nearly 95% of global data flows through these subsea lines. Many of them pass right through West Asia, now a conflict zone. As tension rise between the US, Israel and Iran. These cables are increasingly at risk. Iran has repeatedly threatened to target undersea infrastructure in the Red Sea. If that happens, what does it mean for India's internet? Beneath the Red Sea lies one of the world's most critical digital corridors. Around 17 submarine cables run through it, carries roughly 30% of global internet traffic between Asia, Europe and the Middle East. They carry everything: banking transactions, cloud data, video calls and AI systems. Globally, there are over 500 sub-cables stretching more than 1.5 million kilometers. But a large share of this traffic is funneled through just two choke points, the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz. Both are now geopolitically volatile. So where does India sit in all of this? Around 60% of India's internet traffic travels westwards through cables that land in Mumbai and pass through West Asia to Europe. The rest flows east via Chennai, Singapore and the Pacific. Key cables like CME-WE4, CME-WE5, IME-WE and Falcon, used by Indian operations including Airtel and Tata Communications, pass directly through these high-risk zones. The Strait of Hormuz handles approximately one-third of India's westward internet traffic. That is a primary artery, but the risk is that nearly 15 out of India's 17 international cables land in a small stretch near Mumbai. That is a major concentration risk. If West Asia routes are disrupted, India depends heavily on rerouting traffic eastward. So what happens is cables are cut. Well, a complete internet blackout is unlikely. Data will reroute like traffic finding alternative routes. But with fewer roads available, speeds can drop, latency rises, and services may lag. For companies, disruptions mean costly rerouting congestion and delays, and repairs are not quick. They can take weeks in normal conditions. In a conflict zone, repairs may not happen at all. So what can be done? India is working on solutions, but none are immediate. Google is building a new cable landing station in Visakhapatnam, connecting India's east coast to Singapore, South Africa and Australia. Meta's Project Waterworth proposes a W-shaped road bypassing high-risk zones entirely. A government proposal to build indigenous repair vessels is estimated at 3,000 to 4,000 crore rupees and is under review. But all of this will take years to materialize. West Asia shock rattles global markets. The bombs and missiles are falling in West Asia, but the damage is showing in global markets. Investors have lost a lot in numbers. This loss and the free fall continued. The Sensex is India's flagship stock index. It fell apart. The Nifty is the broader benchmark. It's lost, and it's not just the stock market that is taking a hit. India's currency is also under pressure. The Indian rupee today, the rupee fell past 93 to the dollar. It is the lowest level it has ever touched 93. That was the lowest level. It is a record low for the Indian rupee, and we may not have seen the worst yet because the war is only growing bigger. Investors around the world are nervous. Markets across Asia saw a retreat today. South Korea's KOSPI dropped. This is South Korea's biggest single-day fall since 2008. This was the year when the global financial system fell apart. It collapsed after a bloodbath in the US stock market. Japan's Nikkei was down. China CSI 300 slipped. Taiwan Stock Exchange was down, and of course in West Asia it is the same story. Dubai and Abu Dhabi are the Gulf's twin financial centers. The stocks fell. The markets are observing the shock of the war. Dubai's GDP. The money comes from other sources. Let's break down it. Finance makes up 12% of Dubai's GDP. Constructions makes up more than 6%. Real estate makes up 8%. Tourism makes up another 12%. trade makes up close to 26%, but oil makes up just 2% of Dubai's GDP. And this was a conscious shift. Dubai offered stability and consumerism. Rich people could buy premium residences and live without taxes. Companies could capitalize on the trade boom. Tourists could marvel at the massive malls and science centers. But now all of that is at stake. Thousands of ultra-rich residents have fled Dubai. What remains is largely the migrant labor. Millions of workers from India, Nepal, Pakistan and so on, they drove cabs in Dubai, they delivered groceries, they built towers. Now they are at risk. They lost their jobs due to war. Talk about the airstrikes and bomb attacks in the US-Israel versus Iran war. The biggest war in the Middle East in decades started on February 28, 2026. America and Israel together bombed Iran. Iran's most powerful leader Ali Khamenei was killed within hours. Iran immediately fought back by attacking every US military base across the region. Dubai airports closed. The world went into shock. Nobody knew how bad it would get. Iran confirmed Khamenei's death and went to war in full force. 64 attack waves in one day against Israel alone. Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Saudi Arabia all get hit. Europe felt it too. Gas prices shot up 38% in one day. The whole world was now directly affected by this war. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz in March 3, the world's most important oil waterway. Oil prices began skyrocketing. A nuclear facility was bombed for the first time. The US embassy in Saudi Arabia was hit. Even Amazon's internet data centers were destroyed. The war was no longer just a military conflict, it was becoming a global economic crisis. An Iranian warship was sunk in the Indian Ocean near Sri Lanka, something not seen since 1982. A flat fighter shot down an enemy jet for the first time in history. Iran's navy was being completely destroyed. Azerbaijan, a country that had nothing to do with this war, was suddenly being bombed by Iran. Qatar's airport city shocked with explosions. Bahrain declared a state of emergency. But Iran was also running out of missiles and drones. Its attacks power had dropped 90% from day one. The US and Israel now own the sky over Iran completely. Iran was hitting Gulf countries every single morning. 5 countries, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, UAE, were all attacked at the same time. But behind the scenes, Trump hinted Iran was calling to negotiate. Well, plus countries had been hit by Iranian fire. The world was holding its breath, waiting for either a deal or an even bigger explosion. And Israel bombed Iran together. 200 Israeli jets hit 500 targets at once. Iran attacked US Navy HQ in Bahrain, residential building hit. Bahrain airport struck by an Iranian drone. Iran struck Saudi Arabia's biggest oil terminal at Ras Laffan. Hezbollah joined the war. Second front from Lebanon opened. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of world's oil cut off. US confirmed nearly 2,000 strikes on Iran in just 3 days. Nuclear facilities confirmed destroyed by satellite images. US embassy in Rattles bombed again. Second attack in 2. Saudi Arabia's Armada oil terminal attacked a second time. Submarine sank. Iranian warship near Sri Lanka was attacked. First submarine combat sinking since 1982. First US sub kill since World War. Second Iranian warship sunk at port. 2 ships in Bombay. Israel F-35 shot down Iranian jet over Tehran. First ever split kill in history. 17 Iranian Navy ships and 1 submarine destroyed in total. UAE intercepted 131 drones and 7 missiles in one day. Iran attacked 5 Gulf countries simultaneously. Hotel and 2 residential buildings in Bahrain directly struck. Bahrain intercepted 74 missiles and 92 drones in 7 days total. US embassy in Strait bombed again, 5 permanently closed. Israel expands Lebanon bombing. More than 680 killed in Lebanon. US takes out Iranian missiles. Iranian drones target high-rise buildings in Dubai. At least 1 damaged. The UAE has faced more than 260 ballistic missiles and 1,500 plus drones. Dubai buildings hit by Iranian drone. F-35 shot Iran flex capabilities. US F-35 get hit by Iranian fire, makes emergency landing at West Asian base. Iran deploys the Cecil ballistic missiles in combat for the first time. Military experts call the Iranian weapon as the dancing missile. It is a gas field, the world's biggest gas field shared by Iran and Qatar. It's called South Pass. Israel attacked it Eighth strike sets Iran South Pass gas field ablaze. It is a serious escalation. This is the world's largest natural gas field. It holds enough energy to power the entire planet for 13 years, and now it has been hit the Strait, sent oil and gas prices soaring. Even before attack, these supplies were disrupted because gas was stuck at the Strait of Hormuz. But that was a supply chain problem. You had the gas, you just could not transport it. With this attack, the story has changed because it has hit gas productions. Reports says Iranian attacks has caused serious damage to the facility in Qatar. 17% of Qatar's LNG export capacity has been knocked out, and that is why it marks a dangerous precedent. When you hit energy infrastructure, you make the global energy crisis even worse. Trump's big hormuz warning to Iran: make a deal or face hell. Energy sites in UAE, Bahrain and Kuwait come under Iran's attack. Iran strikes critical infrastructure across West Asia. Attack suspends operations as a planet in Abu Dhabi. Iran targeting UAE aluminium sector. Kuwait. Energy sites in UAE, Bahrain and Kuwait come under Iran's attack. Iran strikes critical infrastructure across West Asia. Attack suspends operations at the plant in Abu Dhabi. Iran's targeting UAE aluminium sector. Kuwait US military sites. Kuwait. Iranian drone attacks hit power and water desalination plants. Iran-backed Hezbollah claims attack on Israel warship off Lebanon. What sites in Iran could face US strikes next? Power plants, bridges. Trump's hit list in Iran. Trump issues a fresh ultimatum to Iran over the Strait of Hormuz. Trump warns of strikes on Iran's power plants and bridge network. The Trump has issued the warning. He first issued this threat on 21st of March. He warned that Iran's power plants could be targeted. Two strikes at UAE trigger fire at its largest gas site in Abu Dhabi and halts operations. US-Israel strikes hit Iran's tallest bridge. UAE Bahrain steel sites targeted by Tehran. 8 strikes hit key Iran bridge linking Tehran and Karaj. Houthi rebels launch missiles expanding role in West Asia conflict. Closing this waterway could trigger a global crisis. Iran claims US-Israel strike hit near its Bushehr nuclear plant. Iran reports US-Israel attack on its nuclear power plant. Iranian media strike hits near the Bushehr nuclear power plant. Israel says it is targeting Hezbollah infrastructure in Lebanon. Iran threats to target US-linked AI hub in the UAE strikes Saudi Arabia. Iran continues to launch retaliatory strikes across West Asia. Saudi Arabia increases its crude prices amid continued Iranian attacks. Iran also threatens to hit US AI centers in the UAE. Iran continues to launch retaliatory strikes across West Asia. With increasing threats from both warning sides, the critical infrastructure in West Asia is at severe risk. If the war continues, it may take only a few strikes to bring down crucial buildings, but it will take years for the region to come out of the impact of the war. To end the war. Amid global pressure, President Donald Trump has pushed a 15-point peace plan, reportedly via Pakistan. It demands a permanent nuclear freeze, missile limits, and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. But Iran has rejected its proposal and responded with 5 conditions of its own. Condition number 1, reparations from the US and Israel. Condition number 2, full lifting of all international sanctions. Condition number 3, recognition of Iran's sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Condition number 4, any deal must protect Iran's regional allies. Condition number 5, Iran's ballistic missile program off the table, but US has also rejected Iran's proposal. After a few attacks, Iran unveils a sweeping 10-point plan amid fragile ceasefire. President Donald Trump has agreed to a truce with Iran, pulling back from what he had earlier projected as a major escalation in West Asia. Trump has announced a 2-week pause in hostilities with Iran, signaling a shift from military posturing to diplomatic engagement as both sides move closer to an agreement. Donald Trump said this will be a double-sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives and are very far along with the definitive agreements concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran, but a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. The US has halted plans to target Iranian infrastructure, including bridges and power plants, as part of the agreement. Donald Trump said, "I hold off the destructive force being sent tonight to Iran and subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz. I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks." Trump called the deal a total and complete victory and claimed Iran's nuclear program will be perfectly taken care of. Shortly after President Trump first claimed a ceasefire with Iran, Tehran declared victory over Washington, framing the truce as a result of its own military pressure. Iran says its retaliatory attacks forced the United States to step back. Now the war launched by the US and Israel in late February has been missile and drone strikes across the region, targeting infrastructure, military sites and oil supply routes. Tehran is calling this as a historic victory. It says the US has agreed to discuss its 10-point peace plan, which includes: here are 10 key point plan for peace, stability and regional security. Point number 1, complete cessation of war in Iran. Point number 2, end to conflict in Iraq, Lebanon and Yemen. Point number 3, permanent halt to all regional hostilities. Point number 4, immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Point number 5, security guarantees for maritime navigation. Point number 6, compensation for reconstruction in Iran. Point number 7, full lifting of sanctions. Point number 8, release of frozen Iranian funds. Point number 9, commitment to not developing nuclear weapons. Point number 10, immediate ceasefire upon acceptance of all conditions. Trump has also responded to Iran's 10-point plan. He said the plan is workable. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbasari also made a key announcement. He said Iran will temporarily reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway critical to global trade through which nearly 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes. The strait has been restricted by Iran during the conflict. Meanwhile, on the streets of Tehran, a very different picture is emerging. Pro-ground demonstrators gathered in public squares, waving Iranian flags and chanting slogans. Pro-government demonstrations erupt in Iran. State media is projecting these scenes as a show of national unity, with many calling this is a moment of victory. For Iran's leader, these visuals reinforce the message that the country stood its ground against global pressure. Public says they are not committed, but things have changed now. Now, America has understood that Iran is a superpower, and if they don't act on the agreement, we will definitely deal with them in a different way. Temporary ceasefire comes with strict conditions and timelines. The next 2 weeks will be critical and determining whether it ceasefire becomes a pathway to peace or just the another path to prolonged conflict. So, where does this leave the world? A fragile ceasefire, high stakes talks ahead, and a war that's paused but not yet completely ended. No time frame to end the war. This statement has rattled global agencies. The IMF has issued a warning. Thus, the International Monetary Fund, it has identified 3 risks for the global economy. 1. Higher inflation, mainly due to the rising energy prices. 2. Slow economic growth. And 3. Stress in financial markets. These are not separate problems. They are all connected and they feed each other. When oil supplies drops, energy prices rise. When energy prices rise, everything becomes expensive, from food to transport, from manufacturing to electricity, everything costs more. This pushes up inflation, and when inflation is high, everyone is hit, from households to businesses. Households cut back on spending, businesses slow down investment, and it reflects on the financial markets because investors then start pulling their money out. In fact, it's already happening. In this war, global markets have seen a significant sell-off, and it's especially bad for vulnerable economies. And like I said, the Indian rupee is also struggling. Today it sunk past 93 to the dollar. It's the worst single day fall in more than 4 years and the lowest that the rupee has ever touched. There is no sign that the worst is behind us. India increased fuel prices because India imports most of the energy that it uses. Experts say the rupee could slide even further. It could go down to 95. The energy supplies remain disrupted. The rupee will fall further, and that's a real risk, given that the warning slides are showing no signs of stopping. In fact, the IEA has issued an advisory. That's the International Energy Agency. It's the body that oversees global energy supplies. It has asked households and businesses to reduce fuel consumption. It has released a set of recommendations like work from home, use public transport, drive at lower speeds on highways, reduce non-essential air travel, and switch to electronic cooking if possible. This is the old energy watchdog. It is asking people to consume less energy because supplies are under pressure. It's bad enough that we are paying for a war we did not start. In the US, tax cut stimulus was expected to kick in. Growth was on track. Instead, the United States is now managing the fallout of this conflict. It is hitting the grassroots. US gas prices have now reached their highest levels in years. This impacts not just the consumers. Oil powers the entire supply chain. The machines that manufacture phone, the diesel that moves it from a factory to a ship, the truck that carries it to a store. So when oil gets expensive, everything in the chain costs more, and that cost lands on the consumer. Americans were already stretched before this war began. Housing costs are up, grocery bills are up, electricity statements are up, and now fuel. So the average American is being forced to catch up more for essentials. Expanding, and global energy crisis is expanding. Iran said non-holistic ships can pass the Strait of Hormuz, the choke point which fueled this energy crisis. Ships are passing from the Strait of Hormuz again, but the supplies are far from stable. Asian economies are being forced to resort to extreme measures. This is the world's biggest energy crisis in decades. There is no quick fix. So, when will this end? According to one expert, even if the Strait of Hormuz open, it will take at least 200 days to clear the shipping backlog. Even now, Iran has not fully reopened the strait. Only some ships are being allowed to pass, so this crisis is far from over. If this conflict continues in further, Europe could be impacted by supply shortages. Not only Europe, not only Asia, the entire world will be impacted by war. It affected from food to transport, from manufacturing to electricity, everything costs more. This pushes up inflation, and when inflation is high, everyone is hit from households to businesses. West Asia war rattles the world. The global system makes it under pressure.